Testing, testing. All right. Welcome to Intro to HTML. My name is Ethan, and I'll be running this workshop this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So this workshop is basically going to cover super basic HTML, CSS, and actually a little bit of some JavaScript concepts. So if you've never used any of them before, this workshop is definitely for you. And by the end, we'll make like we'll make it like a simple web app that uses some basic HTML features. But before we get into the actual creation of the web page, I'm going to go over some basic HTML concepts and go over some resources you might need to get the tutorial going. So it looks like we have a solid group here, so I'm going to go ahead and just get started. If any of you have questions, or I'm going too fast, feel free to send a message in the chat. Cool. So one thing you'll need when you're developing in HTML or just and for this workshop is a text editor. So the one that I'm going to be used is called Visual Studio Code. That's my personal favorite because there's a lot of different plugins that you can add to it. One of them that makes developing with HTML easier is the live share, or I'm not 100% sure the name, but there's one plugin that allows you to just click go live, and it'll basically immediately opens your program in a browser so that you can test it. If you or like you don't have to use Visual Studio Code, Atom, Notepad++, and TextMate are all popular ones, and I believe these are all free. So just Google it, and you should be able to download it. So now I'll just go over some basic HTML concepts. And one way to see what HTML actually looks like is to inspect element or view the page source of any of your favorite sites. So for example, you can just go to Google. If you're on Chrome, you'll just right click and click view page source. And you can do that too, and it'll show you some example of what HTML looks like. And what you'll notice is that every single HTML file always starts with this tag, which is !doc_type HTML. Basically, that's every HTML file. You're going to see that at the top, and then you'll also might see an HTML tag denoting when the HTML is actually beginning and ending. So there's other types of tags that you might see in HTML, and one of them is called head. And the head tag contains info that's not visible to anyone at the site, but it can help search engines and contain the title of your page. So one thing that you might hear about a lot is like search engine optimization, or just like considering in your product when do you want your when do you want your website to come up when people are searching for stuff. So say you're making a site that is for selling selling backpacks. You might want a bunch of different key terms that would be in a search like that in your head tag, so that when someone searches for the site, that information can come up. And then body tag this is all the content that the user will see when the page is rendered. This is another kind of example of what the structure would look like. So you have the HTML tag denoting when the HTML starts, and then the head tag with a title. I think this title actually might be what ends up going like in the tab when you see the name. So it actually might not be fully missing from what what the user can see. But in general, head is not what the user can see, body is. And then some more tags. These are probably what is going to be the most popular is some so you'll see like P, and P is basically means paragraph. So that's going to start like a new section of text on the page that when it's rendered. And then there's the tag H and then a number denoting a heading. So this is some bigger text. And there's H1, H2, H6, and basically what this means is the larger the number, the smaller the text would be. So you can think of like heading 1, that would probably be the first heading on the page. That should be the biggest text. Heading 2, a little bit smaller. Heading 6, still bigger than what a paragraph would look like, but much smaller than heading 1. Whoops. And then EM is italics. A href basically allows you to insert a link, and you can also use mail too for a link to start an email. But there are a bunch of different tags. I'm sure if you you searched in your favorite search engine a list of HTML tags, a bunch would come up, and that's the great part of developing with anything but HTML in specific, is that there's so many resources online. So if you think that you want to do something but you're not sure, if you search it up, I'm sure you'll be able to find a solution. So this is another example. Image source basically will put the image that is from this source. BR means break, so it's going to have like a gap in the web page, and then UL, which it allows you to basically have a list. So I think UL might be unordered list, but I'm not 100% sure. I actually have to double check about that one. But then LI allows you to have an element of that list. Okay, there we go. So OL, actually, I must have been right because now it's OL. So unordered list, ordered list. And then you can see here that there's the number list too. And then this is a comment. So basically in a tag, if you put an exclamation point dash dash, that will make it a comment, allowing you to just maybe put some text describing what's going on in the code or any other information that is not actually being used to render what you see on the screen. So these are another big tag that is used, the table tag. You might, for many reasons, want to display a table on your HTML page. And one way to do that is with the table tag. And then I believe TR is what allows you to, or so TR I think stands for table row, and TH stands for table head. So I think head is what's going to allow you to define the, what each column is representing. So as you would see, the TR meaning table row. So then the first row of the table is usually what it's describing. And then at the end, so TR is the first row, and then TH is a header, and usually the first row of your table is the header, so that would make sense. And then TD is any sort of data that you're putting there, and that would be in the second row. So yeah, some basic CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It styles the elements you already have in HTML, and it doesn't really consist of any content itself. It just is basically allows you to more specifically describe how you want your HTML elements to look and improve the style. So you might make a new file and name it style CSS. You also might just do it directly in the same file because it's possible. So it just depends on the organization of your program. And then so one way, if you were to be linking your HTML to a different page, which just to keep it simpler for this workshop, we're not going to do, but just so you know that you can do it, is to have a link that is titled style sheet. The type is text/CSS, and the ref is style.css. So that's essentially linking to your style.css file. And then the structure usually looks something similar to this, where it starts with selector. Basically, this is how you're going to identify this in your HTML, and then you'll have different properties, and you can assign the value of the property. So, for example, you might have a paragraph that you're going to use. Well, like remember from before we had the P tag. So I think this here is going to adjust the style of whenever you use that P tag in your HTML. It's going to make the font size 24 point font. It's going to make the color green, and it's going to make the background color black. And just so you know, the resources, honestly, my favorite resource to get information about HTML is W3 Schools. Basically, any feature that you want to use, you can basically search the name of the feature or like the name of the HTML concept and W3 Schools after it, and there's likely a page that has some documentation on it, and it's really easy to understand. It has examples, so it's a great resource that I definitely suggest checking out. And so that's the end of my slide deck, just talking about general HTML. But but we're going to start to work on a little demo here today. And what we're going to do is basically going to allow us to have 3 different tabs. And this is not like necessarily a cohesive program that is trying to achieve one goal, but it's going to teach you about different how to play with different elements of HTML and how to get some like basic functionality. So the first, so basically it's going to start with 3 different tabs up top, but what it's also going to have is on the text tab, just a bunch of text. But the point that you're going to learn from this is how to make text scrollable, so that it's not all going to fit on the single screen and you need to scroll to see all of it. Then there's the choices tab, where it shows you how to use checkboxes, or I think they're also called radio buttons officially. And then you'll have a drop down that says like Mercedes, and then when you click submit, it'll say sounds like you want a red Mercedes. So it's just going to combine those 2 on the click of submit. And then there's also going to be a to-do list. This is probably the most complicated one we'll get to today, if we have time. And basically you can add different information, like take out trash, add also clean kitchen, and then you can also remove elements by clicking that X. So yeah, that's basically how what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna walk you through that. So the first thing that you'll want to do in order to get that going is to open your text editor like we talked before. So my text editor is going to be Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open a new window, and I'm going to start a new file, because just to make it easier for everyone and not have to worry about project structure, we're just going to kind of make some HTML and CSS on the same document, and I'll show you how to reference them to each other. So we're going to start a text file, or actually, what's not a text file? It's going to be an HTML file, but let's just call it workshop.html. Let's save it to my desktop. And like we said earlier, the beginning of every HTML page is going to start with a doc type HTML. And then after that, you might remember, was just the HTML tag. And so there's going to be, all of our website is going to essentially live between this HTML tag. And then within there, the next part, like we mentioned, is the head. And the head is where we're going to store the information that is not, what the user isn't seeing directly. So, and you can do that by typing head in between brackets, and it might automatically create the close for you. But it might not do that for everyone. And also, to keep it organized, you might want to also tab in as you get to more specific sections of your HTML. So the first thing I'm going to add to my head is just kind of, I'm going to tell the program or the HTML how I want the entire site to render. And that's going to be within the meta tag. And I'm going to type name equals viewport, because it's essentially telling the website how to render the site. And the content is going to be, so I wanted to render, the width of the device that I am using or that is rendering it. And one of those, and the way to do that is to type width equals device dash width. Oops, my bad. It looks like I was sharing the wrong screen. My bad. Let's see. And we have it. I believe that's the wrong one. Share screen. There we go. So as you should see, this is what the main site should look like. It has the doc type on top, then HTML, and then head is what I'm working on at the moment. So you'll see that inside of head, I'm giving it some information about the device width, and I'm doing that like this. Cool. So that's that can be the top of the head, and some other data that we're going to want to give it is, I guess we're also going to want to have the style here. This is where we're going to put our CSS, but we might add the CSS after we have the element working on its own. So I'll add some information to that later. So in order to get those tabs that I was showing you before, we need to make, first we have to declare the body. So the body, like I said before, is where the information that the user can see goes. And that will be outside of the head. And inside of it, our first div is going to be a tab. So you can declare that by typing div and then class equals tab. And then you'll see that automatically creates the closing bracket for the div. And since we're going to have 3 buttons in this class of tabs, we're going to make 3 button tag elements. And I'm just going to call it, tab links for the class name, but you can call it some descriptive name of tab. And then after that, you're going to write on click. So basically saying on click, when the user clicks this button, what do you want to happen? And what we're going to do is we're going to have it call a method that we haven't implemented yet. So I'll just do the first one for now. And it's going to call open tab. On click. Sorry, it's going to call a method called open tab. And then into that, we're going to pass an event. Then we're going to pass some text. And then the next part about this line is going to be what we want the user to actually see inside of the tab itself. And that's going to be text, because that's the name of the tab. As you can see, that automatically allowed me to close that button up. And then, so let's just say we just have that one button for now. The next thing we need to do is we need to declare what is going to go inside of that text class. So you can see it's saying, I will declare this function later, but essentially what it's doing is it's passing an event and it's passing in text, and text is going to be the ID for the section that we want to be displayed when you click that tab. So in order to create that, I'm going to make another div inside of body, and I'm going to say div ID equals text, and class, we'll call it tab content. And then also inside of that text, we're gonna, I'll like the way that I'm doing this, where I'm, first just describing, one of the tabs that we're going to be doing, and then describe one section of it, and then we'll get more specific as we go on. But I'm just gonna have the skeleton there. So, this is where we define the types of the different tabs we're going to have. This is, the different buttons of the tab itself. This is where it calls the function on what to do when you select a specific tab. And then this is, so for the one tab text, when you click on text, it'll display what is inside of this div, which we're going to put later. So next up, I'm going to create the buttons for the next 2 tabs that we're going to use in this program. So we'll have button class, it's still going to be tab links. You actually don't need these spaces here. I'm just used to doing spaces between equals because I've been using a lot of Python, but in HTML, usually the style doesn't have you do that. And then on click, we're going to open a tab, still with an event, but this time we're going to pass in choices. And we actually want single brackets there. And then the option will be choices. And then don't forget to close your parentheses. Cool. So that's what it should look like with your open tab call inside of quotes, and then you close your bracket and have the text that is actually going to be displayed. Next up is our going to be our third class, or our third button, which we're going to also going to be in the tab links class, but it's going to be called to do this time. Cool. So now if we click go live, then the, well, so see, it doesn't like that I just made this file on its own. It wants me to put it in a folder in order to use my go live feature. So I think actually I might not even need to do that. I might just be able to go to my desktop and click on workshop.html, and yep, it'll open up. So if I switch gears here and share my different screen, you'll see that when I run what we currently have, it has text, choices, and to do. It has 3 tabs here. Right now, we have nothing set up for it to do when you click on those, but it will. But it will in a little bit. So let's get back to the code. So next up, we're going to basically create the next 3 divs here, where we describe what's going on in the rest of the other tab pages. So we already did the text one. Next up, we're going to do the choices one. So we'll do div ID equals choices. And then class is still going to be tab content. And then within that, we'll get back to that. We'll do the third one first. So we'll do a div ID equals to do. And it'll also be of class tab content. Got the equal sign. Cool. And then let's see here. We're also going to now, before we get into each individual page, and we have to, describe your what's going on in each of them. Let's create the function open tab that is actually going to switch to that page. And I just saw a question: how do you check your HTML in the browser again? So all you need to do, I feel like most computers now, if you just can find that file in your file system, like for example Finder on Mac, then you just click on that file. It should open in the web browser and show what you've been working on. So going back to what I was about to do with the script. So usually a lot of times you might see people making another file for their JavaScript code, and that is, usually in a massive project, a good way to organize all of your code, and then you can just kind of reference it in your HTML. But technically, what you can do is declare your JavaScript directly in the HTML tag if you really wanted to. Doing it on another file just allows you to reference it in your HTML without having to have like a really, really, really long file. But since this is a small project, we can kind of just do everything in the same place, so we can visually see it easier. And the tag for adding JavaScript directly to your code or directly to your HTML is just script. So inside of the script, we're going to define the function open tab. And it's going to take in the event. And it's going to take in the tab name. And in this function, we're basically going to loop through each of the tabs. And if we can basically get the tab that is selected, we're going to display it. And you can use that using some functions called like get element by class name, get element by ID, and some other ones. But I'll walk you through it as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is declare some variables. We'll declare I for iterating through the tabs. We'll create one called tab content. and let's create one called tab links. And don't forget your semicolon. And then we'll set tab content to be equal to document, which is basically going to get the information from the entire page. So document.get element by class name. And we're going to type tab content. So you'll see what that'll do is it'll get the element by its class name, literally as it says. And when we pass in tab content, it's going to link it with these 3 different classes here. And it's going to basically make an array of elements that match that. And then we can loop through them to find the one that we want. So, so we'll declare a for loop, which if you're not familiar with, I definitely suggest you looking up. It's a really important concept in computer science. So you'll set I to 0. You'll loop through while I is less than tab content dot length, and you'll increment I every time. And then you'll say tab content at I dot style dot display is none. So I'll explain why this is important later, but what you'll need to do next to make sure your information is actually being described is set tab links to be document.get element by class name. And pass in tab links. And then we'll do another for loop there. We'll reassign I to 0, go while I is less than tab links dot length, and do I plus plus. And then we'll say tab links at I dot class name equals tab links at I dot class name dot replace with the string active and an empty string. And then the last part, to assign document. So do document.get element by ID this time, and we'll pass in the tab name, which is the parameter of the function. And we'll do dot style dot display equals block. And then do event dot current target dot class name. You add active to it. So I'm not going to dive deep into exactly what all this JavaScript is doing because I know this workshop is focused on HTML specifically. But basically, it's allowing us to get the tab name and then display the part of the website that is that corresponds to the tab that you just selected. So basically that's what's going on in this function, and that's where it's being called on the button itself. And then the next part, I'm going to go back to the style because we did reference some style here, and I want to make sure that it shows up as needed. So the first thing we'll do is I'll just define the body as using the Arial font family. So basically this is going to say everything inside of body, which will be our entire program, is going to use that same font family. After that, we're going to make we're going to style the general just tab. And inside of that, we're going to do a few different things. So we're going to set overflow to auto, meaning that this is what is going to allow us to kind of, have things to keep on scrolling, or if something doesn't fit necessarily in the tab itself, it'll just automatically rearrange. The position is going to be fixed. We'll just, we'll set a border around it, and it'll set the background color to this. But you can use whatever color you want just to kind of be able to identify it easier. The next part will be to define the button tab, and that, whoops. So essentially, just .tab is going to describe everything that is in the tab, but then .tab button is only going to describe things that are within the tab class, but then also within the button class. So this is just going to declare some information about the button itself. And then lastly, we'll have tab content, which is going to describe the information inside tab content, which is just basically putting the border. Overflow Y scroll is what's going to allow us to scroll before, and border top was none, so that there's no gap. And yeah, so that should be the majority of what you need for this CSS, but you can always add more just to get it more customized. For example, one thing that you could do is just change the color of the button when it's being hovered over, and you would do that by doing .tab button and then :hover. So there's always more ways that you can customize it, and like I said earlier, I encourage you to use W3 Schools to go ahead and do that. So next up, we're going to start filling the content of our tabs. So starting with the text one, which is pretty simple, all we need to do is create the header, which we described before. It's just by doing H and then basically the size that you want it to be. I'm just going to go with H3 because I think that's a solid size. I'm going to call it text. And then I'm going to have a class called scroll, and that's going to basically be the section of what is going to scroll. And then this is where you would put your actual content. So just to demonstrate it, I put a bunch of paragraphs that say this will not fit on a single screen, meaning you'll have to scroll for it. And I'll show you right now how that would look. So you'll see that on my refresh, I just updated it with the style. And now when I click text, it says this will not fit on a single screen. And you might have seen earlier that I was doing it in the size of a like an iPhone. And the way to do that is to go to inspect element, and you can kind of select the dimensions of it. So when I was originally working on this, I was trying to think of a way that it would render on a cell phone. So I picked the iPhone SE, and you can see that it would require someone to scroll in order to get to all of the information. And that's one of the great parts about inspect element, is that there's a lot of different tools that you can use to manipulate the website differently. Cool. So let's get back to our code. So that now that we have the first page done, we can move to the second one. And here it is the choices one. So this is basically where you can make some checkboxes for radio buttons where you can select the color, and then a drop down for the kind of car you want, and then have it print out what your favorite color will, what kind of car you should get depending on what you selected. And in order to do that, I'm going to first make the header, H3 again, and have the header be choices. And then I'll make another header, H4, and I'll say, what is your favorite color? So that we can prompt the user to answer the information on the screen. And then within that, we'll make some input. And here the input are going to be 3 radio buttons. That so basically what you want to do is type input, type equals radio. So this is basically allowing them to, declaring the type of button that you want, or the type of input in the form we're about to create. And you'll have an ID for it. So representing like what is inside of that, what's inside of that button. We'll make a name for it. That's just kind of categorizing it. I called it favorite color. You have the value, and then at the end, you'll actually, this is what changes the text that the user will actually see on the screen. And then after that, once you have all of your input, or once you have your input buttons, the next thing you're going to need to do is create the form. So you can do that by the form tag. And then within it, form, I didn't automatically close out my form that time. So I have both forms. And then inside of that form, we'll make a label for it. And so we'll do that by saying label 4 equals cars. And then in that, I'll say, what is your favorite car? And then, so that's just basically labeling this drop-down menu that we're about to create. And then now I'm going to basically declare the options that are going to be within that drop-down. So I'll have select name equals cars. ID equals cars. And then within that, we'll have our options. So, I'll do BMW. We'll do Volvo as an option. I'll do Mercedes and an Audi. And then after that, we'll have the form. So that they'll have the drop-down menus. And actually, I'll show you what it looks like currently. You got the website, we'll refresh it. You'll see choices. So far you see we have our different colors here. Oh, whoops, that's the working one. We have the choices, the different colors here. Then you have our drop-down menu with different options. And now what we want to happen is to write, you should get a blank, and it'll be the color and the kind of car. So let's go back to the code. In order to do that, we're going to have to use some JavaScript again. So let's see here. First, we'll put the paragraph where we're going to have that text. And that's going to say, sounds like you want a, and then it's going to, we'll use a span here to get the variable of the result of the form. And inside the span, you'll have the class op2, like option 2. And you'll have one, you'll have another span for option 1. I'm going to just organize it slightly better. And then there is where you actually want to close out your paragraph. And then now is where you'll want to have your next, this is essentially where we're going to define what happens when you click your submit button. So we'll define our button for submit. The same way we declared the tags, kind of. We'll have a button, and it'll be of an on click, and it'll call the method cell opt, and then it'll show the text submit on the button. And then inside of the script itself, we're going to have the script tag again, and it's going to be type equals, and then in quotes, text / JavaScript. So earlier you might have seen how we had, like HTML. Maybe I need to do it up here, but you describe it as text / HTML. Here we're describing it as text / JavaScript. And in that script, going to define that function cell opt. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out what element is being selected in the dropdown. So we'll do selected element dropdown equals document dot, and we'll use the query selector here to get cars. And basically, it's going to look for where we define here the name cars. It's going to use that query selector to select the one that has been identified. And after that, we'll have OP1 or operation 1 to be cell select an element dropdown so like the dropdown again is going to be an array, and then we're going to get the all of the options, but at the one that is selected. So you can do that by using selected element dropdown, and it has an attribute selected index. So basically, this will get you the index of what is selected, which is a number, and that number will be used to index the entire dropdown menu to get the one that you're looking for. And then that might get you the actual object, but you want its value. So that's when you're going to use dot value. And then you're going to use the query selector again to assign it to the tab content. And it's going to be called .op1, and its text content is going to be set to op1. Try that parenthesis here. And then essentially we're going to be doing something similar for getting the selected radio button. And it's going to look like this, or you have the selected element radio, you use query selector all, and the selector is using the input type radio checked. So it's basically querying the entire document for something of type input, like we did up here, where it's of type radio, but the one that is checked. And then it's going to assign that to, it's going to get the query selector OP1, OP2, which are used when we define the up here. And it's essentially going to assign the text in here to be the content of what is found here. And you'll see, I think it should work when we refresh the page. The choices, red, BMW, submit. Sounds like you want a red BMW. So we've gotten some success there. So now all we have to do is do the last page, which is the to-do list. So we'll head back to the code. And we'll go into our to-do tab content. And here, we're going to basically define our header. So div ID equals my div class header. and we'll have a style. So here, this is an example of how you can define some CSS directly in the HTML. So you'll see that in the header, we'll use a style, selector here, and we'll directly assign it to have a margin of 50 pixels. And then again, this is the text that the user will actually see. We'll define some input of type text. We'll call it, the ID will be my input, and we'll have like a placeholder for it. And then we'll have another span, which has on click, called this function new element, and that button will be add. And new element is going to basically get the data from what is typed in and display it in the to-do list. And that's what we're going to work on now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define the list that is the elements are going to be added to. So we'll have ul ID equals my ul, and so that's going to be empty, right? Because it's going to be empty to start, but then we're going to use more JavaScript later to fill that in with the information that is added to the text box. So that's where we're going to create another script. We're actually going to have to make a few functions here, but for the sake of time and because this workshop is mainly focused on HTML, I'm going to might speed past some of this JavaScript part. So I'm going to copy in the JavaScript and then describe what each function is doing there. So we'll have the first function. Well, I guess we're only defining one function here called new element, but it's going to use some of this other information here. So we'll get the list of documents, or the list of elements that are been added to the to-do list by using document.getElements by name, li. We'll make a variable I, and we'll loop through that list. And for all of them, we'll create an element span, we'll create a text node, and we'll do a bunch of different setup here. And this is basically what's going to allow us to update the to-do list. Then we're also going to have a close button, right? We want to be able to get rid of the element from the to-do list, and that's what this is doing here. And then we'll also need the query selector UL to get the unordered list. And then when it's clicked, basically invoke a function that is going to, set it to be checked, basically making the element done. And then the main function is going to be the new element one, which is going to basically take all the information and add it to the list. So it's going to get the element, it's going to get the input value, and it's going to get the T, which is like the text node. And if you try to input something that is empty, it'll say you must write something, otherwise it'll add it to the ID. And then it'll create the element like it does up there, and it will, it will display it. So let's actually see what happens when we do this. Oh, looks like we're missing the text box. Let's see what went wrong. So that's one of the great things about HTML is that there's always some bugs, but it's I'd say it's fairly easy to not fairly easy, but if you take things one at a time, you can usually find the bug pretty easily. Let's see. A lot of the times when you're find a bug, it might just be because something, you're missing maybe a close bracket, or you might be missing like how you opened and closed the tab. But Either way, yeah, say that those are like the main things that you want to check at first. Mhm. See what's going on that's different between this and the working version. Let's see. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so I noticed that there was like I was mentioning before, how it's often a problem with the brackets. I saw that there was one missing bracket from what I had compared to the working solution, and look at that. Now we have a to-do list that, if we do the example from earlier, take out the trash, clean the bathroom, and then delete it. All that, it all works. And then if you try to add something empty, you get a pop up that says, localhost 500 says you must write something. So, but overall, I say that, while this isn't a, sometimes this isn't a, this isn't necessarily a program that, you would expect users to need, right? Because it's just a basic thing. I feel like this definitely gives you a great structure of a basic website. But overall, I'd say that one way to keep learning your HTML is to basically you can use this document and play around with different CSS attributes and then refresh the page, see what changes, and then that will allow you to teach you what different things do. And because that's what I really think, basically for all programming, but specifically with something like this, it just you'll learn the best by actually doing it. So I encourage you to do that. And also using online resources like W3 schools and other online resources like that are super useful. But with that, that's all I have today. If you and I would be happy to share my code afterwards. Just I will. So if you where you checked in for the event, you should be able to find some of the information on that organizer page. And if not, I'll be sure to update it there. But I hope all of you enjoyed this. And with that, I wish you the best of luck. I encourage you to attend other Global Hack Week October events because it's a great opportunity to learn new things. But besides that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you, everyone.